and welcome to today's web seminar on how the COVID-19 rent relief funds can help foster youth facing the housing cliff. My name is Amy Lemley. I'm the Executive Director of John Burton Advocates for Youth. We're right at 9:30. We're going to give people a few minutes to join today's web seminar, and then we will get started. So thank you very much for being here. We're looking forward to sharing information with you this morning. Good morning, everyone. For those of you just joining us, we are giving people a few minutes to log on to today's web seminar on how COVID-19 rent relief funds can help foster youth facing the housing cliff. We appreciate everyone being here today, but we are going to give ourselves a few more minutes to, we've had a lot of interest in the topic today, and we want to start with people on and able to hear all of the content. So thanks for your patience. Okay, that's 2 minutes. Again, let's get started. Good morning. My name is Amy Lemley, and I'm the Executive Director of John Burton Advocates for Youth. I want to start by thanking everyone who is joining us this morning for this web seminar. We are really excited to share this information with you, and so we will get started. Next slide, please. So we're using Zoom webinars today. We encourage everyone to submit questions on the question answer icon on the control panel. We'll do our best to address as many of those questions today, either through the presentation or at the Q&A at the end of it. Any questions we aren't able to answer, either because we don't have time or we don't have the answer, we will make sure to answer and circulate after the web seminar. We have disabled the chat, so that everyone can give their full attention to the content being presented today. But if you do have a comment or a question, again, put it in the Q&A and we'll make sure that is circulated broadly. In the chat today, I did send out a link to the PowerPoint. So if you want to download that, you can follow along. We'll also send it out as a PDF after today's web seminar. And then together with the PowerPoint that is posted on our website, we'll be adding the link to this video. So that should all be available shortly after today's presentation. Next slide, please. So we're really excited today to be joined by Amy Tenenbaum with Public Counsel. Amy is in their LA office, and she's been working hard administering this program in LA. So she's going to be sharing her experience there. Leading us through the online state application is my colleague Anna Johnson of John Burton Advocates for Youth. And then we're also joined today by Elizabeth Clues. Elizabeth is a youth advocate at John Burton Advocates for Youth. She's actually applied to the COVID-19 rent relief program, and she's going to share her perspective on what that application process was like and offer some guidance for those of you who are going to be leading other youth and young adults through the process. So thank you all for being here today to share your experience and the information you have. Next slide, please. So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk briefly about the young people in foster care facing the so-called housing cliff. We're going to talk about the COVID-19 rent relief program. Then the bulk of our time together is really going to be Anna walking us through the Housing is Key application process. And that is a very detailed screenshot, screen by screen application process. And so in many ways, what today is really a train the trainer. You're going to be walked through screen by screen how to sit down with a young person and how to complete this. Now, if you are a young person, you're going to get a direct training. Most of the people on the web seminar today are adults who work with young people. And so, you know, we've done our best to kind of address the most commonly experienced circumstances. And so that is what most of our time today is going to be. Then we're going to turn to Amy, who has done these applications. She's going to share tips for how to make them successful, how to make it go through the first time. She's also going to share very important information about eviction protections that we should all know about. Then we're going to turn it back to me. I'm going to talk about some resources that JBay has for you, as well as some strategies to kind of push this information out. And then we're going to end with the Q&A session. So we have a lot to get through, and we're going to do our best to do it on time. Next slide, please. And the next slide. So we are here today, you know, one reason anyway is to address young people who are on the, you know, so-called housing cliff. So last April, when the pandemic really came into effect, the governor signed an executive order authorizing young people who turned 21 to remain in foster care after age 21. That was extended in the state budget in 2020, and then also extended until December 31st, 2021. And so here we are, November 2021. We're about 2 months away from this deadline. And a lot of people around the state have been working very, very hard to make sure that the approximately 3,500 young people who have elected to remain in foster care make a safe, supported transition. And so that's what this webinar is about. It's one tool in the toolbox to hopefully help young people make a safe, supported transition from foster care. Next slide. The program that we're going to be talking about today is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And it is a program that the federal government created to provide emergency rental and utility assistance to individuals during the pandemic. So the United States Department of Treasury developed this program. It consists of 2 separate programs. There's a kind of a first round and a second round. It helps income eligible households with rent and utilities. That's both past rent and utilities and prospective rent and utilities. And it does not count as earned income for the individuals who receive it. So it does not impact all of our many important state and federal safety net programs such as CalFresh and CalWorks. Next slide, please. So here in California, we were allocated $4.6 billion in Ewrap. So that's B. It's almost really hard to wrap your head around how much money that is, $4.6 billion. Some of it was allocated to the state program, some of it was allocated to counties, and some of it was allocated to cities. So it isn't one, it is one program, but it's being administered kind of at 3 different levels. And today we're going to focus on the state program. But I want to be clear that some money goes to the state program, some money is being administered by counties, and some is being administered by cities. Next slide, please. So the state program was established under Senate Bill 91, and it established Housing is Key, which is the COVID-19 rent relief program. In California, the California Department of Housing and Community Development administers that program. They started accepting applications on March 15th, and they're going to continue until funds run out. Now, the state program will keep accepting applications till funds run out, as will local programs. And so do we know the exact date of that? No, we don't. So I guess the guidance, the first piece of guidance we will give is let's apply today. We know young people are going to need this assistance as they transition from foster care. So I think the sooner we can support young people in this application process, the better. Next slide, please. So to date, the state program has provided over $900 million in rent and utility assistance. It was interesting, even as we were preparing for today's web seminar, the state has a dashboard that they regularly update to show the amount of funds that have been paid out, and the dollar would change day from day. And so even from when we started the presentation, it was 900 million. As you can see from the dashboard here, it's now over $1 billion. And so you can go to that dashboard and get a timely update of how much funds the state program has issued. Next slide. So you might be asking, there's the state program, there's these county and city programs. How are they similar? How are they different? The reality is it's the same program. So what is the same? It has the same eligibility criteria, the same verification requirements, the same financial assistance available, and the same case management assistance. So it really is the same program. It's just administered in different jurisdictions. What is different is, depending on if you're applying for the state program or a local program, the website interface looks a little bit different. That took a little bit for us to wrap our heads around. The wording of the questions, even though can be a little bit different, and the examples of verification can be a little bit different. But this is one program, one set of eligibility criteria. And I guess I'm saying that because we're going to run through the state program. But if you live in an area of the state that administers a local program, you might say, well, it doesn't look like it looked like on the web seminar. That's because it's a different website interface, but it is the same program. And so we need to kind of press through and utilize those programs, even if it looks a little bit different. Next slide, please. So who is eligible? The great news is the eligibility is extremely broad. You need to be income eligible, which is 80% of area median income, which is significant. This is, earning as much as, $79,000 in the Bay Area. So all of our young people meet this eligibility criteria. I would imagine virtually all of them. You need to be a residential renter, but you do not need to have a formal lease. So a lot of people have wondered that, like, well, I'm a rent and I pay rent, but I'm not a leaseholder. You don't have to have a formal lease. You have to have unpaid rent or utilities, or need help with future rent or utilities. And again, how many of our young people around the state don't need that? It's a very difficult time. And then you have to have a COVID-19 related financial distress. And when Anna walks through the application, she's going to show you, I believe there's 15 different ways of verifying that. Anything from reduced hours. It's a very broad set of categories. So the program was really designed to be inclusive, not to be exclusive. And so and for all young people who are on that housing cliff, they, by the very fact they're on the housing cliff, have a COVID-related financial distress. Their public benefit program will be ending as of December 31st, 2021. So just as you see below, there are no citizenship requirements, and participating in this program in no way impacts the path to citizenship. And that's heavily emphasized throughout the program to not discourage non-citizens from applying. Next slide, please. So what's available? So unpaid rent back to April 1st, 2020, unpaid utilities back to April 2020, up to 3 months prospective rent, and future utility payments. And so you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the average amount of assistance that's been issued by the state program is almost $12,000. So this is a sizable amount of money. That's the average. We know how averages go, from highest to lowest and averaging. So this is a good amount of cash assistance that can be available. Next slide, please. So a few key takeaways before we go really into the details. The application allows for self-certification of most of the information. Again, the purpose of the program is to be inclusive and accessible. So many things can be self-certified. If you earn less than $100,000, no proof of financial hardship is required. A formal lease isn't required. And people who are even experiencing homelessness can apply. So even if you are currently homeless and you really aren't paying rent because you don't have a lease, you can also apply. So that's a little bit about that. Next slide. So we know that this is one resource, excuse me, and there are many other resources. So this isn't an either or. We like to think of this program as an and. Many of you out there are working with young people in foster care to access a lot of different programs, FYI and FUP vouchers, THP plus, dorms, shared living, other settings. And so one way to think about this is not or, am I going to do this or FYI or FUP? Think of it as and. It can be a great complementary source of housing support until THP plus becomes available, until that dorm opens up. And so that's just kind of one thing to consider, to have a little bit of redundancy and to help them apply for both of these. Next slide. The other thing we just want to encourage is, our framing of today's web seminar is about young people on the cliff, but it is in no way exclusive to young people in foster care. This is a tremendous program that's available for many, many more. Our relative caregivers who are often living in a very fragile, kind of marginal, they can be facing housing insecurity, older former foster youth, extended family members, students on campus accessing basic needs resources, currently homeless youth. And so we hope that you will help us spread the word about this program to meet the wide number of Californians who meet those eligibility criteria that I described earlier. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna, who is going to walk us through the application process.
Thank you so much, Amy, and good morning, everyone. So this is the part where I'll show you the kind of slide-by-slide view of the state process. So just to get us started, the first thing that I'll point out is that you can actually have young people call for an appointment by using this 833-430-2122 number. And they can get an appointment with a local provider who is working with the state on helping people apply. The other way that I'll show you is to apply online on your own or with support. And when you go to this website, housing.ca.gov, you'll see the Housing is Key online application, and you'll see how many languages are available. There's a lot more languages than are currently on the screen. So what you would do is select to apply now in the language and your primary language. So if I click apply now, it's going to take you to this map of California. And what you do is you enter an address to find a local or statewide program. So when you type in the address here and click search, the map will actually kind of zoom into your area. And it's not necessarily super intuitive. Here's where you type it, click search. And then this smaller, so I live in Richmond, so I did Richmond. And what happens is it zooms into the application jurisdiction and how to apply. For myself in Contra Costa, I would apply to the state program. For others, a youth that we worked with in Bakersfield, it was a local program. And for some people, it's both a local or state. So in that case, you might want to apply to the state because it will model these screens that we're about to show you. But what you do when you get to this is you click view the program application. So you click right there on the word view. Before you start the application, they have just 3 screening questions. Our presentation today focuses on question 1 for a tenant. So young people who are paying rent either in a formal lease, a sublease agreement, or an informal agreement, or who are homeless and need to become a tenant. So you would click on tenant. And then it asks if you're a member of a tribe. So it lists the different tribes. So if you're Native American or Indigenous and select a tribe, there's actually a tribal application that you could be supported with. Most people are going to say no on question 2. Question 3 is then this area median income. So what you do is you select your county and the number of household members. The majority of our household members are going to be an individual single youth who is paying rent in their own apartment or a room in a shared apartment setting. but they file taxes on their own, and that's their portion of the rent. So it'd be a household of one. If you're a parent and have children, you would put in that household number. And if you're living with someone and you're all on the lease together, you could put in for the whole household, but that means you need everybody's information. So I'll show you that in a little bit. But these are the 3 screening applications. And again, as Amy said, pretty much unilaterally, young people, current and former foster youth, are going to qualify for area median income, let's say in Santa Clara County, is over $80,000 a year. So our young people are not making that much money typically yet at their age. All right, so now you're screened in, and this is how you begin the actual online application itself. You have to register account. Once you're registered, you can sign in, but what you do, you fill out your email address, first and last name, and create a password to what's going to be your Neighborly account. Once you register, it sends an email to the email you register with, and you have to log in to your email and verify that that is your email. It's a real account. And then you sign back in. So this just takes about a minute or 2 to go through and register and verify. Once you verify and you log in, it will take you to the start of an application. So again, we're working with youth who are tenants, and they would click this blue link right here to start a new application. The application has sections A through K, and we'll talk about how to fill each of those sections out next, but it covers everything from, again, making sure that the person is eligible, getting that young person's application information, how COVID impacted them, the amount of rent that they need, past rent and future rent, water, gas, trash, electric, any of those utility bills. So I know we'll answer this question later in the chat, but there's different sections for rent and then the type of utilities that might need assistance. And then after you put in what you need, you go to the household members, income, and supporting paperwork to verify that you are a real person in California, that what you said is your true income is real, and that the rent that you need is really the amount of need that you have. So that is the process that I will walk you through now. First, with eligibility, the question is, are you seeking assistance for rent or utilities? And the answer is yes. Then you officially verify that you qualify on your income and your household. So you select your county, and then again, you select, most of our young people are single adults who are going to be a household size of 1, and they would say, yes, I do qualify. I'm not earning more than this amount of money. So you select yes. And then some cities and counties have their own local assistance program, and it has a drop-down menu. So you just have to say, no, I don't live in any of those jurisdictions. And if you do, you actually go and you do this process on those cities or jurisdictions' own website. So for Alameda County, for the city of Fremont, you click here and it'll take you to that Fremont City's local application, because they have not yet expended their funds. So they're trying to spend the local funding first, and then the state money after that. So that's what's happening there. Next, it's verifying again, are you part of a tribal community? Same thing. If you are, it will take you to that tribe's application page. So for the most part, you'll say, I'm not a member of a tribal community. And again, if you are, you go and apply directly on that tribal application page. So now we're on to part B, the applicant's information. First and last name, the address that you're renting or seeking to rent from, county, and the property type. So, you know, if you're in a hotel or motel because you're homeless currently, then you can put in that address. So there's options that range, and you can also say unhoused or currently homeless. or I no longer live in the unit where I'm requesting assistance. So it's pretty broad and allows for pretty much all of our young people to have an option there that is correct for them. There's this, the next part is, are you currently homeless or unhoused? You can say yes or no. Then you say, do you have a rental agreement? So youth who might be in a THP program might have a lease or a sublease that they can upload. If they're renting from a family member, they may have some type of document or email, message, letter, any kind of formal thing. So you don't need a direct lease, and so you can select that. You put in the address and your information. And for Part B12, I get a lot of questions there. Oh, did I receive any assistance from a local partner network? So if your case manager or a housing navigator is helping you, they're not necessarily in this drop down right here. You can leave that blank. Or if you called that phone number and got help, you'll know who you got help from, and that's what B12 is about. All right, B13. This is a nice page because, again, many people on this webinar are adult supporters of youth who are going to help them know about this application or apply. So this page, a representative information can be put on here. So if the dependency attorney is helping, you would put the dependency attorney's name. If the case manager is helping, you could ask the case manager, can I put your name in here? That's someone who can help get through the process on the back end. And but you can also just say no and move on. You don't have to fill this part out. This next B15, again, this is applicant information. So for that youth, it is their bank information where the money would be sent potentially. So you have to select the preferred method of payment, and it's not necessarily explicit, but it's for the young person. Obviously, because young people can be more mobile, a check would go to a permanent address or to an address. So the address you put in would be important, that they're still going to be able to get that check when it arrives, or the bank account, which would be preferred to be able to have a direct deposit of the payment. So that's the applicant information. And now we're moving on to COVID-19 impact. So the first question, the answer is going to be yes. Anyone in the household experiencing financial hardship due to COVID-19, and yes, for current and former foster youth. And we'll show you all of these reasons that you can mark down, but the answer is yes. Please check the conditions that apply and check all that apply. So many young people we know have been unemployed, maybe for 90 days or more or not, laid off. They may be receiving unemployment and they may not be receiving unemployment assistance. Their employment may no longer be operating. They could have had a reduction in hours of work, which is very common for students or young people where they're just not, their shifts or hours of operating at that business are closed, or when campus shut down and they're no longer able to do that campus job. Those things did happen. That's a real COVID impact. The available work has been reduced. I used to be able to work during the summer at this summer camp, but it didn't run this year, or reduced pay. There's still more that you can say. So just keep checking any that are true for you. Do you have to stay home because of childcare access or closure of daycare or school? Are you self-employed and there's not as much business coming through as a public speaker or contractor, which can be common for foster youth? You're not able to participate in employment due to serious illness from COVID-19 or the risk of that. So a lot of young people in care do have medical conditions, and that might impede them from working during this time. So there's also a financial distress form, costs related to stay-at-home orders, which in our state budget, we actually recognize that there were costs to families and youth for having to get online, having increased utility bills, having a new desk equipment because you're not using the desk at school. These are all unplanned costs. And so almost everyone is going to be checking that box there. And then the reduction or elimination of child or spousal support. This completed financial distress form, there's actually templates online where you can download and look at that example. And a financial distress form too, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. The financial distress form also, like if you had to send it to any bank institution or stop student loan payments, anything like that, where you're saying, I can't pay due to COVID-19. Next, again, child support, or someone in my household had an unexpected COVID-19 related medical or funeral expense, which has been a reality for many of young people. And then child or adult dependent care expenses are increased due to COVID-19. The other thing that happens is that you can put in any other information into this text box. And so what I would recommend for Youth on the Cliff is that you actually put in, I'm going to be exited from foster care on December 31st and lose my financial benefit. I do not have sufficient work or employment or hours in place immediately for this transition. I'm seeking that, right? So you can explain a little bit more about the current situation. And then you click, I attest that what I selected is true, and then you move on. So now is the part of the application where you talk about the amount of rent that you pay and that you need, anything that's past due or future rent. So first, are you requesting rental assistance? Yes. If not, no, and you skip on to the next section. So if you're just looking for utility support, but most of our youth need rental assistance. So you click yes. The monthly rent payment amount. So you put in how much they're paying. For example, if they're in a current THP setting where they're paying a portion of it, it's the portion that that young person needs support with if they've lost their job or they need that funding, right? If anyone has past due rent, you can go back to April of 2020 and put in how much is still owed to that landlord for every single month. And then you can also put in up to 3 current months, November of 2021, December 2021, and January of 2021. And you can ask for all of that. Now, D4 is if someone's been given a notice to pay, eviction notice, or filed an unlawful detainer. If you have that, you hit yes. And if you haven't yet gotten that, you click no. And then if you did get an eviction notice and you want legal help, please check this box where you'll be supported with local legal aid. So, but if you haven't, you don't need to check that box. So this is where, you can see options for putting in how much rent might be needed. So if, again, the young person is paying $1,000 a month of rent, they would ask for 3 months of future rent, November, December, and January. That's how much prospective rent can be applied for. These are grayed out because we're not yet able to request more than 3 months at a time. But if you start helping someone in December, then you're going to be able to do December, January, February. This will then be a blank white box rather than a blank gray box. And that's what it looks like when you type in the amount. Okay, so now you put in the landlord information or the property management and entity name and address, phone number, email, and if you have a landlord case, if the landlord is also applying, which is pretty much always going to be blank. D8 is pretty much going to be blank unless the landlord is also applying for this already. So they will contact the landlord, which helps the process go faster because the landlord is going to agree and do that. And they will actually pay the landlord directly. If the landlord does not agree, then they will pay the tenant directly, and the tenant will have that money and can pay for their rent to maintain their housing. And if the landlord does change at any time, that's actually, something that's going to be a reality probably. And so they can actually then pay that money forward to their new unit or their different unit in that month that they move. So this is just at the time of the application, the landlord. And it does help the process go faster when the landlord does reply to that email, know it's coming, and responds quickly. All right, so that's the rent assistance. And now this part E is quite quick to go through. Just if you received any other assistance for specific COVID-19 rent relief, that might have been state, nonprofit, a faith-based organization, or from friends and family. So most people have not accessed this. Youth who are on the cliff, they haven't been getting this assistance yet, or they might be waiting to get it. But so for the most part, E1, the answer is going to be no. But if someone has been getting, let's say, Section 8 or rapid rehousing or homeless prevention, some of the funds might then also be coordinated with that local partner, or you would ask just for the amount of money that was not met. So let's say wherever you go for your spiritual practice, they knew you needed help and they gave you $300, but your rent is really $1,000. So you still have a $700 amount of need. So this is really just making sure that people aren't getting support in two places for the full amount, just that they're having their needs met. But for the most part, the answer would be no. If you did have prior assistance received, you do have to say the source. And again, if you look at these sources of assistance, many young people may not have received those yet or at all. But if they did, they just put in how much and which support it was from. And just to clarify, a foster care payment is not count as this housing assistance that they're kind of double checking. So that is not something you would enter here. It's just from one of these programs, did you get some relief? So for the most part, this will be blank. And then you move on to putting in your utilities. And I see someone has their hand raised in the participants, but if you can put your questions into the chat, I'm actually going to come back to this and walk through any additional questions at the end. So feel free for that. So yep, thank you. The water and gas and utility assistance. So what happens is sometimes renters, these utilities are included in the cost of rent. So you probably won't need to fill out this unless you pay your water and gas separate. If you have an account, for example, with that, municipality district or what have you. So what you do is if you do have past due utilities, you click yes. And what will happen is a drop-down menu where you put in your account number and same thing, the amount that you need for each month. And what happens is when this is approved is that they will go ahead and pay that money directly onto your account, and it will be paid off that way. So you don't have to get the money and then go pay it. They will go and pay directly off of that account. So if you have your login and you download your statements, this part is a little bit faster where you're like, okay, I have that gas payment due. It was really high that 1 month. And so I only paid half of it. So you go back to that statement, and what you do is you'll upload it. Actually, you'll upload the statement, that actual account document, and it helps them move this process faster. Same thing. Do you have a trash bill? Do you have a sewer bill? You just upload that bill or that statement. There's electrical, and then here is, so some of those young people might be paying, and they might have direct accounts, or they might not. But here is where for sure young people will likely have a direct account for internet, a phone plan, if they're not using the free phone, or they might be paying a portion of it, streamlining, so streaming service. So a lot of students might need different services for school, and they might be behind. So again, if you're not sure if your costs are eligible, you just upload your bills, and the case manager who works with you on this will work with you to clarify the eligible costs. So go ahead and upload those, the phone bill, the internet bill, your streaming bills, if it's something that's necessary for, let's say, work or school. It's probably an eligible cost. So go ahead and upload those. And you upload it right on the application. It's just like an upload button that you click, and then you upload that statement. So that's it. That's how you put in the amount of rent and the amount of utilities that you need. So we're almost done with the application. We're now just verifying who we are and our income. So household members, the primary household members, you do need to provide full demographic information for. If you have a child or you're living with a partner and you're all applying together for the full amount of rent for the full unit, you would put in the name and date of birth for the other household members as well. But you just need this demographic information for the main person applying. And then this is the part where there's kind of 4 options that young people can take to verify that they're eligible for that based on their income. So there's 4 ways to do this, and I'll walk through each of the 4 ways. 1, if you filed your 2020 tax information, you can actually enter in your adjusted gross income. If you didn't file taxes, or if you have multiple household members applying, which is going to be more rare, but you would choose a different method. So if you and your partner and you're applying together for full rent, but if you're a roommate in a house and your friend is the other roommate in a house, you would both apply separately. If your rent is $2,000 a month, you would both separately do this application and just be one person asking for the amount that you specifically pay. But that's what this is. So if you did your taxes, great. That's one option. The second option, you can use a recertification letter from Medicaid or Medi-Cal in California. This is good news for foster youth because our current and former foster youth are eligible for Medi-Cal until age 26. And so if they didn't file their taxes, this recertification letter or process might be another good option for them to take. Now, if they're on CalFresh, they've certified their income already, that recertification is a good option as well. Current foster youth are not eligible for CalWorks, but maybe former foster youth might have that. So that's another way to verify, is through these other income programs where you already had to certify your eligibility. The third option, if you're currently living in subsidized housing, you select that option and they will work with your landlord through that subsidized housing program to verify your income. All right. So for anyone that's currently in that subsidized housing program, that's how the verification will be processed. And then the fourth option, which might be the most common for young people because they might not have their Medi-Cal statement and they might not have filed their taxes. And you can actually just use pay stubs or attest that you have 0 income. So let me show you how this looks. So you get here and you decide, all right, well, what am I going to do? You just have to do one of these. If you got your taxes, you say, I filed taxes, and here is the amount of money that I earned in 2020. Okay, that's how you do it. Then a recertification letter. I participate in Medi-Cal. You enter your household annual income, how much you made in that year. That's on that actual recertification letter from, it can be 2020 or 2021. So I saw a question in the chat that we'll answer later, but you can use either a 2020 or 2021 letter. The letter has to show your name and address, and ID cards and other identification aren't sufficient unless that letter does have that name and address. So then you upload that recertification letter. The next option is to say you're in subsidized housing, not limited to Section 8, housing choice vouchers, and public housing. And again, you enter the household amount when you select that. And then the fourth option, which I think will be more common, is to certify the income. And this is what that looks like: pay stubs, no income, or cash. And the form will do this. You put in your first and last name, your age, the total income. Then you drop down a menu and it'll say cash income. I earn babysitting money, or I earn this, and you enter how much on an annual basis. And again, that's fine. You upload your pay stubs if you have them. Gross pay is what you can enter into this box, and then you upload your pay stubs or a pay stub. If you have no income, you select no income and then 0, and you don't have to upload anything. So no document is required if you have 0 income. All right. So again, this is like a common scenario that I just want to talk through on that certification of income, because you're basically now done with the application. So you can see that there's these couple of kink points where someone might need to pause. The application saves as you're going through it. So if you need to go over and log into your water account and download your bill or download your phone bill and then come back in and upload it, everything will be saved, and you go back in and upload those documents. So if you're trying to help a young person and want to save on that time, ask them to do that when you set up your meeting. Okay, so ask them to have it ready. Sometimes they might need to pause and remember a password or call because they got locked out of account. That's okay. But another big question that comes up is, what is a household? So let me just break it down a little bit. Your tax filing status is you're typically a household. So I'm single, I'm not married, I file my taxes on my own, I don't have any children, or I do have children and I'm the head of household. So it's either me, myself, a single one person, and I use my taxes. And I asked for $500 because I share a house. The other person pays the other portion of the rent. So when I fill out this application, I would apply by myself. I would ask just for my portion of the rent, not the full amount that's owed to the landlord, just what I pay to the landlord. And it's common if you're in shared housing that one person pays the landlord the full amount, but you're only paying your portion. So that's how you do it if you're shared housing. Now, if you're applying on behalf of everyone in your household, you're a young family, you have kids, you would put in the full rent. You would choose those options for everybody's income. Now, if you're not doing your taxes together, you're going to do the pay stubs or no income certification for each member of the household. And then you do ask for the full amount of rent because you're applying together with everyone. So that's how you should consider a household. And that's a common question that comes up. Should I just do me or my roommate? Well, is your roommate, are you paying everything together? Do you do taxes together? If no, you both file separately. All right, so happy to break that down further if needed. So here we go to finishing up the application. The supporting paperwork that's needed to help make the process move quickly. So to provide income documentation, you might need to upload something. You can upload a picture, a scanned copy of a document, or an electronic document, or a screenshot of a document. So, whatever is easiest. Some young people might be applying on their phone, and so screenshots work. So if you selected no income, you can say yes, and then you don't have to upload something. And if you said no, this is where you upload your pay stubs. Okay, did you request utility assistance? I am, and utility is in my name. Okay, or no, I don't need utility help, I just need rent help. So the utility bills are not in my name. So that's kind of how you do that. And then upload one form of identification. So let me show you what those options are. You just need one of the following: state ID or license, a passport, an international ID, again, because you don't have to be a US citizen to qualify as long as you're a resident of California. So an employment identification card, marriage license, divorce decree, statement of single or joint bank accounts or loans that include your name, a credit report, which foster youth are supposed to be supported with credit reports, so they may have this if they don't have their ID as well. A government issued library card, the utility bill, credit card bill, or other bill that has your name and address on it. And then letter or notification from a school, medical facility, government department, which could, again, this if we're assisting a young person in care or a former foster youth, or we're assisting a youth who's homeless and they don't have some of these documents, we can provide a letter or notification as these adult supporters who are working in a government department with the official letter with that person's name on it. So if all else fails in this long list of options, that's how we can support young people in getting rent and utility assistance. But you can't proceed without uploading something. This will just save until you have this to upload. Then most young people are not going to know if their landlord's participating in the program yet. So you put, I do not know, and then provide one of the following. So here's the other thing you need to finish and submit. The lease agreement, if you have one, the sublease, if you have one, it can be expired. A month-to-month rent agreement, the rent due statement letter from the landlord or management company if there's an eviction notice, or a different formal template to collect rents or notify the rents are due, and the written claims of rent due. This can be an email, letter, or text message. Now, if the young person doesn't have any of this, there's this link that we created, a template. You can actually fill out this document. See, it's a live link right there. And maybe Amy can put it in the chat to people, or we'll put it in at the end. But if you don't have these agreements or an email, letter, or text message to upload, fill one of these forms out and upload that form so that you can proceed. Okay, so that's how you'll do that. And then you hit submit. Once all of your documents are uploaded, you can finally hit submit. It becomes an option. And the full process has taken young people maybe about an hour, because they have to, like I said, sign in and register. They have to verify their email. Then there's just a lot of typing. They type in their personal information, the COVID information. Then they might need to upload a couple of documents. They might have a few questions, but for the most part, with a little bit of assistance, young people are able to move through, ask a couple of questions, upload forms. They might need help, like I said, if they don't have an ID with a government letter. They might need to take a few minutes to download things, but about an hour of time is what it takes from start to finish without any larger barriers. So that has been, it's not too burdensome of an application process, especially for the amount that Amy shared. For the average return of $11,000 for people who need that support is a big deal. Once you're submitted, you get a verification email. You can log back in at any time using that link to check the status of your application. So it'll say submitted, and you can call this number 833-430-2122 with any questions, or if your application status changes and you're not sure what it means, you can call that number. But you can also just log back in at any time through that Neighborly software account that you created at the beginning. So that is the application, and thank you for bearing with me through the technical details of it. And next, I'd like to invite someone who's actually completed the application, Elizabeth Clues, who is an advocate with John Burton Advocates for Youth, a current student and a current parent, and a fabulous advocate who went through this application recently and is going to tell us a little bit about it. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. So my name is Elizabeth. I'm a former foster youth myself. And I've really faced homelessness ongoing really since I exited the foster care system. So when Anna actually shared with me about this program that I really kind of vaguely knew about at the time, I was really excited for it. So um, I applied for the COVID-19 rent relief program to really help secure my current housing situation. I'm renting a room from a family right now, and it would really help me to be able to kind of just get caught up and to continue working, working and going to school and taking care of my kids. Um, the process was actually really easy. There were a couple of instances during the application where I really did need to utilize a second set of eyes, in which Anna was really there to help guide me through the process. So that was that was really helpful. I think one of the parts that caught me up initially, as Anna actually showed, was the map portion. I wasn't really sure how to utilize the map and figure out where my jurisdiction was, but we figured it out and it was pretty much smooth sailing from there. Um, and I don't exactly know what the end result of this is going to be, but I definitely think that it's worth it. I mean, you don't really have anything to lose in applying for it. I have been telling all of my friends and anybody that will listen that they need to do this. I mean, it took me honestly probably like 10 to 15 minutes to actually complete the application. Um, I did kind of rush through it, and I'm super glad that I had an adult supporter, Anna, that was really persistent about it, and making sure that I filled it all out, because I sometimes lose motivation very easily. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I think it's super worth it. I want to say that did the application maybe about a week and a half ago. Um, and I haven't heard back yet, but I'm optimistic. I honestly have it saved on my computer in a different tab. So I just periodically check on it. Every few days I see if there's any progress or anything new. And as of now, it just still says pending. But I did ask for $1,200 towards rent. And for me, it was a combination of past and future rent. So having that would really help me. And though I did actually did need some help with utilities, because I didn't have all of that information like right with me, I didn't fill it out. It looks like I can still go back and actually edit my answers. So if and when I get logged into my SoCal gas account, I can go ahead and input that information. So um, as far as advice for anyone filling out this application or adult supporters that are helping you fill out the application, I would say if it is possible to kind of have whatever documentation you do have ready, that's going to make it so much easier. um so much easier. It's I needed to have like my tax information, I needed to have my rental agreement. I don't know, I think that you don't need to technically have that, but I just wanted to have everything that I could to make it really easy to process. So um yeah, just having whatever documents you can, I think is gonna make it a lot easier. But again, it's super worth it. I definitely recommend taking the time to fill it out. I mean, only good things can transpire from it. So
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us and for going through that process and sharing what you learned about it, and just hoping for a positive result there with the status updates. But thanks for sharing your experience and your hopefulness, and for spreading the word to other people who do need rent and utility assistance. And definitely go ahead and get that utility information in there. It's worth it. So thank you so much, Elizabeth.
thank you.
Great. So next we actually have Amy Tenenbaum from Public Counsel, who will tell us some tips for a successful application and has been helping people in Los Angeles with this application process, and can give you some insights there from their expertise in housing. Thank you, Amy.
Yes, hi everyone. So yeah, just to talk a little bit about the application. Los Angeles used to have its own city application, but now everyone is going through the state. So if we can go to the next slide, I can just talk through some of the things that we have learned that just make it go a little bit smoother. So as you know, as Elizabeth was mentioning, it is helpful to have all of your documentation with you. It will just make it easier for you to input all of the information that you need. But at the same time, it is possible to save the application and return later. And I've done that with many of the clients that I've worked with, and it has not had any detrimental effects on the end result for them. It might take a couple days longer to submit everything and get the application to go into the review process. But if you don't have everything, you can certainly save the application and return to it later once you have more information. I believe that in most jurisdictions, you are going to be directed to either apply to the local program or the state program. But if you happen to be in a jurisdiction where you're given a choice between the state and the local, especially if you're not very familiar with the local program, you haven't heard anything about it, you might just want to consider applying to the state, just because that's what we've gone over mostly in this webinar, and it might they do have a lot of infrastructure built up around folks who are reviewing the applications and helping with them. But I think the most helpful thing that I've learned is that you do want to keep pretty regular tabs on the applications that are submitted. As Elizabeth just mentioned, checking it regularly and seeing what's going on. That way you'll be able to see pretty quickly if they've tried to reach out to get an additional document. Just in case an email or other notification doesn't come through, that can help you just stay on top of what else might be needed. Next slide. So something else that we've learned is that generally we advise people that you don't want to have the tenant and the landlord both submitting their own application from the start. There are parts of the application for both a tenant and a landlord, but what we have generally been told is that it's better for one of those two parties to apply first, and then the other should wait to actually get the email invitation to fill out more information, rather than submitting two separate applications from the get-go, just because there can sometimes be a little bit of confusion on the back end matching those applications together. We are also seeing that payment is taking a long time to get disbursed, and it's hard to predict if this is going to get smoother as time goes by. Just as an example, I have folks who submitted their applications back in May and June, and they were just getting their payments in September and October. So it can take a fair amount of time for that payment to actually come through. Potentially that will improve again over time. We've also seen for folks who don't have a bank account, that at least one of the local jurisdictions, so the city of LA, when it was still that program, issued payments on a debit card, and that was a little bit, there were some logistical challenges with that, I would say, because the debit card had a daily withdrawal limit. It can only be used at certain ATMs with no fees. So we contacted the city of LA and asked if there were any other options, but that's just something to be aware of if you are in a local jurisdiction that is issuing a payment in a way that's other than directly to a bank account or via check. Again, this person specifically didn't have a bank account, so I think they had thought that that was an accessible option. Just sort of a heads up that you may need to think about, helping someone navigate using a debit card. And there should be some type of confirmation in one way or the other, whether the payment is going directly to the tenant to then be paid to the landlord, or whether the payment is made directly to the landlord. I have seen the tenant to apply get a receipt or like a confirmation that that payment is about to be made. So again, even if the payment is going directly to the landlord, we are still seeing a notification coming to the tenant. The last thing I'll just say is that we've had a couple of road bumps in terms of if an application is rejected and you think that that it should have been accepted, that the system has just been deleting those applications, which makes it a little bit difficult if you log back in and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I submitted this application, but there's nothing here in the dashboard. So we've alerted the state to see if they can rectify that problem, but it is a good idea to just save a copy of the application so that it's easier in case somehow it does get deleted out of the system, that you can just re-enter that information a little more quickly. Next slide. And I also just wanted to go over just some general eviction protections, both those related to the COVID-19 pandemic and those that are just general eviction protections that have existed for years in the state of California. Just because when we're thinking about rental assistance, especially when we're thinking about how long it takes for some of these payments to come through, I want to be sure that young people and that tenants in general are understanding what their rights are and not what we call self-evicting, moving out before they actually have to without asserting all of their rights. So next slide. So one thing that's really important is that landlords are not allowed to just lock somebody out without going through a court process. We do see that this happens, of course, like landlords take illegal actions, unfortunately, but state law does prohibit landlords from just going in and changing locks, turning off utilities to try to force someone to move out. There are pretty strict penalties if somebody does this without a court order. Again, tenants have a number of protections. A lot of households in the state now have what's called just cause protections, which means the landlord has to have a reason to evict you. It can't just be, I don't want you to live here anymore, so I'm giving you 60 days to move out. There has to be some sort of reason cited, like you're not paying your rent, you're violating the lease. We're taking this unit off the rental market. So just make sure that folks are getting connected with local legal services organizations if they are getting notices, so that they can understand sort of what their full range of rights are. The next point I think is really, really important, which is we always advise people do not self-evict. It's really scary when you get a notice, when you get a 3-day notice to pay rent, when you get a 3-day notice that you're committing a nuisance, or you get a 30-day notice that says you have to leave and no reason is cited. But that notice on its own is not enough to evict someone. In order for a landlord to legally evict a tenant, they have to actually file an eviction lawsuit in court, proceed all the way through the case and get a judgment from the court. And that judgment is what then, initiates the process for a sheriff to actually come and physically remove someone. So I just want to be clear. I know that it's really scary to face an eviction. It's scary to get these notices, but that is not the end of the road, right? People can assert their rights and fight to stay in their housing. And so connecting folks with legal services orgs is really important. And then specifically with regards to the rent relief, I'm going to just read something that I prepared because I want to be very precise about this and what specific protections are in place right now for tenants who are applying for rent relief. So, and this applies to tenants who are facing an eviction lawsuit for non-payment of rent that accumulated due to COVID-19 hardship. So all of those reasons that Anna was talking about earlier, you lost a job, you had a reduction of income, you had increased childcare expenditures because schools were closed, so non-payment of rent and the rent debt accumulated due to COVID-19 hardship. Okay, so from October 1st of this year through March 31st of 2022, before a landlord can get the court to issue a summons in their eviction lawsuit, which is what actually starts the lawsuit, the landlord has to submit a declaration stating that they completed a rental assistance application, and either that application was denied or rejected, or the tenant did not respond to the application within 20 days of the landlord applying. And the landlord also has to say in this declaration that the tenant has not communicated to them that they themselves have applied for rental assistance. So for that reason, it would be important for tenants to be in communication with their landlords in some verifiable way, ideally in writing, certified letter, email, text, to have some evidence that they actually did communicate with their landlord that they were applying for rental assistance through one of these programs. Courts also cannot issue a default judgment unless they find that that rental assistance was applied for and denied. And programs across the state are preparing for how to have this information readily available for judges to look up. So those are some of the specific protections that are in place right now until the end of March related to eviction lawsuits and the rental assistance program. Okay, next slide.
Thank you very much, Amy. We really appreciate that. And we're getting a number of questions about some of the information you presented. And so we will make sure to ask those questions to get your answers. Next slide, please, Anna. So now just a few words about strategies to assist youth. So there are a lot of different ways, clearly individual application assistance. For those of you who are on today's web seminar, we had over 700 people register. Anna and I were talking, like, if each person went out and helped, 4 young people, that's 2,800 young people. So we have a lot of people who care very deeply about young people, and sometimes it can feel like I'm not an expert, but really the best thing we can do as adults is kind of use our kind of administrative skills and our knowledge of these public programs to just press through and help young people. So we definitely encourage everyone to do that. Don't think it's someone else's job, because I can promise you it's no one's job to help young people do this. I mean, we could point to a lot of different people. And so please, go out and help individual young people apply. If you can't do that, and there's lots of reasons why that's possible, connect with a community partner. And so the state of California has contracted with a network of providers to offer assistance. And an approach that we have been doing that is quite effective is a group application. So again, the applications aren't that hard, but there's just little kind of pressure points. And so have 2 or 3 young people be on a Zoom, have them kind of walk through it, or on a call collectively. And so that's another approach to consider doing. Next slide, please. We are going to be kind of offering, or Anna's going to be offering, what we're calling office hours. And that's an hour every week where if you are a provider, if you serve young people, or if you work with young people in any way, and you're helping them with their applications, you can come on, ask any questions. If there's a specific situation, how do we answer this? How do we answer that? You're going to get your individual questions answered. It's not directly for young people. It really is intended for providers who are supporting young people. And then we're also going to be circulating an outreach flyer. And we're going to circulate it far and wide. And we just ask everyone to do the same. Use your social media and whatever other outreach tools you have to get the word out about this important program. So I think with that, we're going to go to the many, many different questions that people asked. They're great questions. Thank you so much for sending them in. I'm going to send the first one to you, Amy. And the question is really, can you give us some reasons why applications are denied?
Sure. So I think sometimes people are found to not be eligible for one reason or the other. Maybe they're found to be over an income limit. Maybe there's not enough documentation. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell why they were denied, but there is an appeals process as well. So if you're in a situation you really feel like someone should have been approved and they were not, then you can go through an appeals process and ask them to reconsider.
Mm-hmm. One thing I just want to clarify is, we're a youth organization that thinks about young people. And so that is why we are conducting this, but this in no way, there are no age limitations to this program. And there are no foster care requirement participations. And so we conducted this because of, our interest in youth and young adults in care or who've experienced homelessness, but this is not specific to that group. And so a number of people on the webinar just want to know about age, want to know about foster care experience. Those are not requirements. You can be any age, you can have been in foster care or not, but those are not limitations. So one question Here's one for you, Anna. You mentioned the state application versus a local program. Is that even an option for those counties where it directs you to the local application?
You'll know if it's an option through that chart on the map. And I could probably take us back up to that slide, but it says program application and it'll say view. If it'll usually just give you one option and it'll be view and it'll take you directly to that local application. If for some reason people are not starting that process from that pre-screening page and from that entering page, like if they're just saying, hey, sign up for this neighborly account, that's when they might have to be redirected out. So that's why we're starting from the beginning of our application with the housing.ca.gov apply now link.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, but yeah, it is, there are some jurisdictions where you have to do that local one. So that just is the way it is. Another question we got is does this program have a different name in certain jurisdictions? It's all the federal Ewrap program, but it may kind of have a different local name. So that's not like great, but if you use that map function that Anna directed you to and follow it, you're gonna find that out. Another question, Amy, is just, can we get the list of protections and legal requirements that you just went through so that we can send those out in a follow-up email?
Sorry, a list of protections. So the COVID-19 related ones are under a state bill called AB 832. That's where you can find all of those. But going through all of the tenant protections, I guess I would say if you can connect with local legal services providers, because like I said, there's a number of protections that existed even prior to COVID. There might be local rent control, rent stabilization ordinances. There's the statewide Tenant Protection Act. So those are some places to look, and I can gather some resources for the follow-up email.
Great, thank you. And another one, Anna, this is a question about for currently homeless youth. That wasn't one of the options that we screenshot and walked through, but can you verify that this is available for individuals who are currently homeless? And if it's so, how do they enter in the amount of rent due?
Yes, so essentially they put in the address of the hotel where they're staying, so they can ask for the cost to continue staying in that hotel and motel unit. And if they have a potential unit to move into, or the typical cost of a room or unit that they have an option to move into, they can request that amount of money into the future and upload that written statement. So if they've got, and then they'll verify with that landlord or person or program, right? But for now, I would put in the hotel motel and the amount to remain housed.
So if it's more of a doubled up, tripled up kind of couch surfing situation, would you recommend putting where they are physically?
Yeah, I would put that current address and just explain, there's a couple of ways to explain the situation where that COVID-19 text box, you can say, I'm currently homeless. I am, I'm being asked to leave. I need this much money to move into a unit. Rent is this much in my area.
And I think that really is kind of one of the main value adds of the adults on the web seminar today is, a young person left to themselves has a hard time kind of feeling like this program is for them. The program, presents itself at times as not being very accessible for young people that may not know what these terms mean, and they may be worried about getting in trouble, but it is absolutely available to them. And so doing that translation role is really important. The next one is for you, Anna. Can these funds be used to pay for costs owed to university or on-campus housing?
Yeah, so I think, if you have a cost to a dorm or a campus housing or anything like that, what you would do is, again, you put in the month by month cost. So you can ask for, if you have that rent or housing cost past due, you put in for each month. If you have a future amount due, you could put in up to 3 future months amount of that, and then you would take that that payment that's owed, and you would upload that document about
Mhm.
how much that costs from the school or from that housing. Okay.
Yeah, so we've gotten a lot of kind of questions that are like this, but in a nutshell, it's a young person who's living with a family member or a friend. They're not a leaseholder, so they're living kind of an informal living situation. So they don't have a lease in their name. They are paying something to live there. Anna, how about young people in those circumstances?
Yes, one of the options is to upload a written communication, a letter, an email, or a text. So you could just work with that family or that housing that you're staying in and say, hey, I'm applying for this rent relief. Or you could show anything that you already have. Most people who are in these situations, they have some form of communication that has been agreed upon in order to be there. And if you don't, create one. And that's why we have that form. That's why we have, there's these different documents. You can just create your own letter. And then you put in that family's information. They're going to verify exactly what you're saying, so that's why you're putting in that technical landlord information. It's that place where you're staying. That's who the state is going to talk to confirm that what's in the application is true and correct.
Mhm. All right. So here is another question is, what about if individual owes past rent to a different landlord than they're going to pay future rent to? Any guidance about how to approach that one?
Yeah, I would ask for the total amount past and future rent that's needed, and put the current address where you are.
Okay.
You can split the amounts between landlords. You can upload both kind of statements. It doesn't restrict you to uploading one file. So if you have those documents, I would upload both.
Mhm. Amy, this question is for you. In your experience, have landlords been reluctant to apply or do not fill out their portion of the application?
Yeah, that does happen sometimes. The landlords are required to submit a W-9. Sometimes they just really want somebody out. But in that scenario, if a landlord doesn't fill out their portion of the application, I believe that the protocol is that the program tries to contact the landlord 3 times. And if they don't respond, then the money can be issued directly to the tenant, and then the tenant agrees that they will pay it to the landlord as rent.
Great. So, and I want to revisit the homelessness one. Again, that wasn't a scenario that we drilled down on, which, hindsight's 2020. But can you tell us where in the application, like we applied like in this experience for past rent, but can you direct people to where the checkbox is for currently homeless? Currently homeless individuals are absolutely eligible for this, and we want to make sure you know where to indicate that so that we're not missing out on those with the greatest needs. So thanks, Anna, for doing that.
There are a couple of places where you can say I am currently homeless. I believe one is in the beginning, right here in applicant information, and you say unhoused or currently homeless in B5 property type. There's also these little question boxes where it says, what do I put in? It kind of answers what you're supposed to put into that box. Or this is again to the prior question, I no longer live at the unit where I'm requesting assistance. So you can request from that prior unit for past due rent. But I no longer live there, or I'm unhoused or other. Okay, so that's one part. There's another part, now bear with me while I flip through the screens. This part is where you can explain I'm currently homeless. So I would put it in here as well in the COVID-19 impact and talk about, financial hardship due to COVID-19, as well as being homeless. And then maybe you're homeless and you've applied for these, but you haven't yet received any assistance either. So or you might be waiting on assistance. So this part is where they might see this person has been homeless, but they didn't get any recent assistance. The assistance they got, and it ran out. They got some in 2020, but now when you kind of zoom forward to the 2021 part, you will see that there hasn't been any recent assistance. So this is another part where it might be more common if you're assisting someone who's currently homeless, to show that that assistance is not being provided or not sufficient to maintain housing or enter housing.
Right, and this is kind of another, example of, trying to press through and help this program work for people. Most people aren't homeless. Most people accessing this aren't homeless, and so it's not a perfect, kind of administrative fit, but the guidance is very, very clear that it is available for homeless individuals. So we're going to just run through a few more questions.
Can I say one more thing on
yeah.
this, Amy? On supporting paperwork. So a letter or notification, I would say from a homelessness provider or the school. If you're homeless and you're attending school, this is another place to say, I do not have a house. You can upload a notification from an adult supporter that also confirms that this person is currently homeless and needing assistance. So, and then here, the written claims of rent, or please provide one of the following. So you can upload this link, use this template, and say exactly what's going on and request the amount and why you requested that amount of rent, because you're homeless and you need a security deposit, you need to get in, you need that help. Okay, so go ahead, Amy, with the next question.
Oh, totally. Well, we're getting at, we did a lot of outreach to THP NMD providers, and so we do have a fair number of questions about that. And I guess a general question I would share would be like, they don't pay rent currently. How do we go about future rent? And really what that requires is determining where is this individual going to live after they leave your program. That is where that future rent is paid for. So I know there's a lot of different circumstances, but one could be, going to live in a group setting with an extended family member. They're going to go live somewhere. And so it does require really saying, all right, this program, you do need to leave at the end of the month, at the end of December. What is the plan? Who will be your landlord? Even if it's not even if you're not a leaseholder, even if it's an informal setting with an aunt or an uncle or cousin, there's going to be somewhere, and let's find out how much money that person needs for you to live there, and let's get you some rent. So it's not necessarily, it could be about, extending in that housing program, but the housing program is then going to end again. So it's really about working with the young person to do that transition planning, so that they can access this funding for their future housing situation. There's another number of questions. Maybe we'll take two more questions. And this one, I don't know, Amy or Anna, if you want to answer around, what if the utility bills are not in your name, but you are paying for them? Can you still apply for it? Or what guidance or recommendations do you have around that?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly still try to apply. I guess I would say in some scenarios where there's been something that's not totally clear based on documentation, I've just submitted an additional declaration that explains what's going on. So, just laying out, I live at this property. You can see that this is the same bill on the utility address. It's not in my name. This is the reason for it. I actually pay for it, signed under penalty of perjury. So I think that there's a couple of places in the application where you can upload additional documents, or you can just put that in the same section where you put your utility bills. So that's how I sort of explain any sort of non-standard documentation. And it's been okay.
Great, thank you. This is a person, I believe they're from a campus, and it sounds like they're very deeply involved in this. And they said they're currently doing everything in person. While someone trains, and they're working on it. I think the challenge of online is, does a young person have a laptop? So I think that's a very good point. If you can do it in person, I mean, that probably individual assistance in person is the gold standard. If you can't, potentially some kind of group online format. But yes, I definitely hear you there, and agree with you that if that's possible, that would be that would be very good. So we have almost 100 questions. Many we answered, some we didn't. A lot of them are the same ones. I think what's really important, Anna, in our final minutes, can you put the phone number that people and the website that people can apply to? That phone number is, you see on that little box, apply now. That's one place where people, really need to know that, and that website. Those are both key resources. And this information will be included in the follow-up to the web seminar today, along with all the other resources that we discussed. And we will also go through the Q&A and answer the most kind of commonly asked questions and provide those answers to you. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to Amy for being on today's web seminar. Thank you to Elizabeth, who did need to step out, but we are looking forward to getting good news about her application, and appreciate everyone's time and effort today. Thanks again. Have a good day. Bye.